Yes. Welcome back to Mother May I Sleep with Frank Conniff. Actually, Honey, Can I Sleep with Frank Conniff?
No, it's what? Mother. The name of the podcast, just so you know, Irene, is Mother May I Podcast with Frank and Irene.
Okay, sorry. I just, my mind, it's so perverted. I don't have any control over that. Frank, look what I found. I thought this might be an interesting read.
Oh, nice.
For anybody that's interested, because our guest actually has a book that's out in Barnes & Nobles and everywhere. I went to pick up his book, and sitting next to it was The Beautiful Poetry of Donald Trump. Apparently, this is a reconfiguration of all of Donald's words put in the form of poetry. And I think as we're about to leave, I'll probably read just a very short one. It's hilarious.
Mr. Okay, Trump's favorite poet is... E.E. Cumming into Stormy Daniels.
I think it's already copywritten, Frank. I think I saw that in here.
Okay.
So, Mr. Conniff, how are you?
I'm good, thank you.
In the world of how are you handling this whole the COVID? Handling what's going on with the MADs? That's another thing that I'm sure.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know when this is going to air. There's a big announcement about the MADs coming tomorrow. I won't say it now, but it's going to be a big announcement. So just hang in for that.
And by tomorrow, he means 2 weeks ago. I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah.
But stay tuned, because I'm sure that's
If you're seeing this in the future, go to my Twitter feed, and I'm sure you'll be able to find all the announcements that I'll be making about what Trace and I are going to be doing very soon.
And very funny jokes about everybody we hate. Remember that. There's always that too. Well, that's very exciting, but you've been doing a lot of walking. You've been here. You know what I've been hearing a lot of? People really don't believe, and this is very scary to me, even more, I don't want to say liberal-minded people, but more open-minded people really don't believe in the whole mask-wearing thing. They feel like at this point, if you just socially distance, that you're not going to get sick.
Well, we're realizing now that certain conservatives or Trump supporters or Republicans or whatever you want to call them are so anti-science that they're even rejecting the basic science that if you wear a mask, it will not just protect you, but more importantly, it will protect other people. That's the part that they hate, the part about protecting other people. And Trump doesn't want to wear a mask because he doesn't. His whole policy has been just to be in denial, and I'm sorry to say that his initial policy for the coronavirus, that it would just magically go away, that didn't quite work out. So now we are.
Don't get tested. If you're not tested, you don't get the results. The likelihood is that you don't have it at all. He's crazy. Even my neighbor's dog jumped on me and started sniffing my crotch, but he was wearing a mask, so he was being safe. Okay, this is how much I take it seriously. Don't be a doucher. Put your mask on. It's very important. Anyway, and oh my God, I love these inside. I have nothing to show. Okay, so tell everybody who that is.
That's Millie.
That's Millie.
Who's never seen, when guests come over, they never see Millie because she hides. But
it's so true. She's better on Zoom, because when I came to see you, every single time I've been there, I have never met Millie in the flesh.
Millie has never met any of my guests ever.
Millie, now you have Frank all to yourself, Millie.
Yeah.
Better wish what you wish for. Well, no, watch what you wish for is what the saying is. Anyway, okay, so we have somebody on standby for the show that I'm going to admit into Zoom seamlessly. Believe me, this Zoom thing, I'm producing this, and I don't know what production means, but Millie, that's right. Tune out. That's what I say. We have an awesome guest that's waiting to come on. This guy is probably one of the most prolific filmmakers I have ever, seen in my life. He wrote a film, Applesauce, Richard's Wedding, Summer of Blood, which is comedy horror, which I love, Catfight, The Misogynist, Black Magic for White Boys, which is going to be coming to video on demand in July, and God damn it, he's the author of this funny book, and I mean hilarious. Help. There's an elephant in my house. It's like a cartoon book for adults that just don't get it. It's amazing. And with further ado, I'm going to admit is that I love it. Is that her tail or her paw?
Yes, that's her tail.
Oh my God, I love you, Millie. Millie makes the world better. Oh, Millie, look at you. Look at that. And I'm just sitting in front of my bed. I'm such a sloppy host. Everybody else makes their thing look very pretty. There he is, the one, the only Mr. Onur Tukel, everybody.
Yay.
And hey, I'm applauding for Irene and Frank. You too, as well. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for being here. Everybody looks well produced, and I'm just sitting in front of my bed like some bludgeoned bitch that just has given up. Okay, at least I made the bed, so that's good. Onur.
Yeah.
I watched your film, and I thought I watched it for the third time. And every single time that I watch this film, I love it more and more. It's amazing.
That's really nice of you, Irene. Well, you're great in the movie. What did you think about seeing yourself? When you watch yourself act, do you like watching yourself, or do you get nervous about seeing yourself? Or
I don't get nervous about seeing myself, but I'm always like very vain, and I'm like, I really hate that fucking angle. My nose looks really big.
No, yeah, you look
terrible.
Beautiful. You look beautiful in the movie. You're great. I'm glad that we got to add some scenes too, because we shot, remember, in 2016 and 2018. Yeah. We got to add some more scenes with you to like give your character a kind of a full storyline, sort of.
It's a great. I love watching it, and it couldn't be more relevant than it is right now. I feel like the fact that it's dropping on demand right in July. Is that the
July 3rd? It's supposed to be this Friday. I guess this Friday. Yeah.
The timing is perfect for this film.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to say about white privilege, particularly because the three main characters kind of represent different degrees of kind of white abuse of power. You know what I mean? Like there's the magician who who basically wants to keep his show, and he has the Book of Magic, and he represents kind of an old ideology, white, old, or middle-aged ideology of like letting go of control, sharing the stage with different people, sharing the mic. I guess that's what the end of the movie kind of represents. He wants to cling to his nefarious ways of doing business. You know what I mean? And it's like these things aren't working; they're not popular. And his, the idea is to share the stage, open it up. Let's forget about old sorcery and magic, and ring in a new kind of era of thoughts and ideas. And he's against that. He's the notion of like the closed-minded white guy who is just not open to the newness, to change. He's
you see a lot of that in our society. That's for sure.
Right. So change is a big theme in the movie, and like he's reluctant to change. And I don't want to give away the ending, but you see what happens. He's like, he has to share the stage at the end, and instead of embracing it, he'd rather just not exist. And then there's my character who represents, the white misogynistic asshole who wants to control women's bodies. You know what I mean? So I think he represents that, and also he represents some other selfish things as well. And then there's the real estate developer who basically represents, I think, the racism inherent in capitalism, and the Book of Magic, which allows him to basically, make cheats. It represents kind of laissez-faire capitalism, where there are no rules. Because his justification for making all the people of color disappear in the neighborhoods, which represents gentrification, it's just business. You know what I mean? Like it's not. Don't take it personally. Gentrification is part of laissez-faire capitalism. It's part of the system. So I think the movie is relevant, and then it does kind of treat. And of course, there's the secondary characters too. There's Ralphie, the young kid with the blonde hair.
Oh my God! Okay, let me just say something about him. Colin Buckingham, is that his name?
No, Colin's the short guy, the dwarf. Then
who's the kid with the skinhead? What's his name?
Yes,
I call him a skinhead.
The character's name is Ralphie. He's played by Brendan Miller in L.A. He's a great actor.
He's great.
And he's terrific, and hopefully he'll blow up one day. What's interesting about his character is he's funny, and he steals every scene that he's in, but he's so egregiously racist. He's just so uncomfortably racist. You know, we throw the N-word out there a few times, and we throw the K-word for Jewish people out there a few times to represent that side of the equation. You know what I mean? Like, you can have capitalism and the rules of capitalism, and you can say, well, that's not racist. Like, you know, you can have a man saying, I want to force a woman to get an abortion, and it's part of a relationship or whatever. But we wanted to represent, we want people to say, these people are awful, they're terrible, white privilege, et cetera, et cetera. But then we want to show the absolute far right extreme of it, which is Ralphie.
Alt-right, Nazi, skinhead.
Yeah, the Nazi skinhead. But we also want to present the idea that change is possible. You know, that he's aware, he falls in love, he wants to keep his girlfriend. In order to keep his girlfriend, he has to change, and he's aware that he's racist. He's aware that he's an asshole. And I wanted to show that he was willing to change, you know, by the end.
I lost this audio.
Oh, you lost my audio?
Oh, just for a second. You're back now.
Okay, great.
So we wanted to represent that even the most pernicious and wicked people out there, we have to live in a society that hopefully you can become more aware and you can change, you know?
Now, do you personally, do you think that, because I worry about, like, Trump supporters, like that capacity for self-awareness, that capacity for change of people who are racist, realizing that they're racist, and doing something about it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of that, at least in terms of the hardcore people who are alt-right. Like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of that, of people realizing. Do you think that that's something that that people are capable of?
True change.
Yeah.
I personally think that
even the most deplorable people, the most deplorable, the unshakable.
I feel like the way to reach people like that is through kind of compassion. Instead of barking at them and preaching at them and saying, you're a racist, you're an asshole. It's like coming at them from a different way. I think humor is a good way to do it, but also in a way that's just like appealing to their good nature. I'm from a small town in North Carolina, right? Not to say it was a racist town, but you know, there is a lot of racism in that town. And I grew up, and I kind of posted about this on Instagram during what's happening with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, when a lot of the guilt and shame I've carried as a person, as a human being, as a Southerner, as a person who's conflicted about identity, because I'm a Turkish American and my parents were immigrants. I was the first generation born here. Not to make this about me, but when I grew up, in high school, in middle school, in the foothills of North Carolina, which they treated us very well, you know, my immigrant parents. But we were also, I'm the son of a doctor, so there was the class issues there, you know. But we use the N-word very cavalierly and very, you know, I had a lot of black friends. I had friends that would sleep over at my house that were black, and, you know, we were all very, very comfortable and close with each other, but we would tell N-word jokes, and we would just use it very loosely, and I'm ashamed of that. You know what I mean? This was high school and middle school. And I'm like, I had to unlearn all that behavior when I got to college. And it wasn't my parents. I didn't learn it from my parents. They never said the N-word ever, but you were just around groups of people who would use the word. And you know, when I got to college, I had issues with the girlfriend that I dated in college, having dated, you know, black guys. And these are things that I'm completely ashamed of. And I've been carrying the shame for 30 years. And I feel like my movies are ways of me working out my awareness. I still consider myself a misogynist based on the way I've treated women and girlfriends, the way I still treat girlfriends. I'm like, I know I'm a misogynist. I'm trying to work on these things. I know I'm still a racist. I still have racist thoughts from time to time that pop in my head, not from a place of hate, but just reactionary anger. You know what I mean? And they're towards blacks, or towards Jewish people. There's towards Arabs after the bombing in Boston, you know what I mean? Like, even though I'm Turkish, I would think nasty.
And towards Greeks. Let's not forget the Greeks, you son of a bitch.
Always. That's never going to go away. You know what I mean?
I've experienced prejudice towards Irish people, but I actually agree with the people who are prejudiced. So.
Oh yeah, exactly. So so you're all in.
My race does suck. So
I have a lot of antipathy towards Turks and stuff like that, and I criticize them often. I criticize the things. I mean, I love humanity. I love people, And
I have a love-hate owner. I also have a love-hate relationship with Greek people. I feel like I know them so well because I am Greek and I know the culture so well. Sometimes I find them detestable. And then I feel like I'm not being a great Greek. But for me, it's like, I feel about Greeks in many ways the way that I feel about myself too. Because I know I know Greek people so very well. I know how they think. I know that they can be very judgmental. I can be very judgmental. Okay.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be a judgmental person. Sometimes I try to hold a thought back and I'm already judging somebody. And my big joke is that I stop judging or try to stop judging people because I always turn into them no matter what I'm judging.
Right.
But, 1 week later, I'm doing the same thing. I was just putting down YouTube shows and guess where we're going with this. Okay. So
no, of course, absolutely. I've been way more critical of the left since Trump got elected. Obviously, I love the left. I consider myself a lefty, but I feel like in a way there has to be an ability to talk to the right without saying, and I'm not assuming, Frank, that you're left or right, or that Irene. I mean, I think I think that for me, my criticism of the left and most people that disagree with the other side is there's just too much division. There's too much of an inability to relate and talk to each other and listen to each other. And I feel like in order to reach the other side, there has to be less like barking at people and talking at people.
I think what you're saying has a lot of merit to it. But if I'm being honest, I have to say, in this day and age, I've sort of given up on trying to find common ground with I don't know how you meet someone halfway on racism. I don't know how you meet someone halfway on putting children in cages and stuff like that. Like I just, it's just, that kind of mindset to me is like kind of an old, it seems like back in the day there were liberals and there were conservatives and we disagreed about a lot of things, but there was common ground on some things. Now it seems more like just that there's decent people and people who are racist and want to watch the world burn.
And they're deplorable. And there is no shaking hands and making a deal. You're right, Frank. And that's why there's a revolution going on during a pandemic, because actually we needed to shake shit up. We need to separate. There is no making an agreement. If somebody is so set in their ways, they're never going to be accepting ever. And it's okay. We'd like to think that everybody's going to change, but they don't. And I think that's been indicated. And every single day we're getting more of the gravitational pull of reality that certain people are married to their old ideals of hate and they're not willing to part with them.
But I think there's enough people in America who can change there's enough decent people that there are a lot of people I can come together with. But right now the people in power seem to be that hardcore minority of people who are just virulent in their hatred, and I don't know how I'm supposed to come to terms with them.
Yeah, go ahead, Irene.
I was just going to say, Onur, I understand if you're feeling like somebody, like some people are just genuinely ignorant, okay? They really don't understand things. If somebody's willing to, educate themselves or somebody, and sadly enough, we all know that change often doesn't occur unless we're deliberately affected or afflicted. If something happens to us deliberately, then only are our hearts able to open and understand. But there are people that we're operating on fear. They're afraid that something's going to be taken away from them, and they're literally stockpiling hate, and they are fighting for it. They are not going to let it go.
I agree with you on that, but also when you talk about fear, like for me, it's pretty simple. We have 4 months, and I feel like everyone has to come together to do one thing, which is vote in November. I feel like that is what needs to happen.
Absolutely.
My fear of this is things like defund the police. I understand what it's all about, and I understand why it's important, and defunding like the military, reallocating more money to other things, to education, into cities, into outreach, into education. 100%. But my fear is in the simplicity and what the defund police, what it just says in the simplest way. And some voters' minds might be like, well.
Right. I agree. I don't disagree with you.
I have to protect my family.
I don't disagree with you. It's a language thing. I had this conversation with somebody. People, I don't think really fully grasp what defunding the police means, like you just said.
Sure,
okay? But when they read the word defunding the police, it actually really scares them. They think immediately that means that the police department's going to be abolished, okay? And they freak out. I had this conversation with somebody else when in fact defunding the police has a completely different meaning, okay? It's reallocating.
Yeah. Well, there needs 100%. To be a different messaging on it, you know. Joe Biden has rejected that and said he's not for defunding the police, which I think politically is a smart move on his part, you know.
Yeah, it's just a matter of saying, let's not do anything that like freaks out the moderate conservatives or the moderate liberals who will do the right thing, hopefully, in November.
Also, wording is everything, the words that you choose. Again, when you hear the word defund, it sounds very, very daunting to some people. They really feel like somebody's going to come over, pull the rug. You have everybody living in fear and paranoia anyway. So I understand what defunding the police means, okay? Yeah. And we all understand what it means. But I've actually talked to people that don't really grasp defunding. They hear the word defunding and then they get very, very scared.
This is where we are, though. We're in a world where we see the byline of an article and we think we know what the article says without reading it. You know, we see the headline, we see a tweet, and we think, oh, everything is represented in a 10-word tweet. Like just the words defund police makes people think they understand what it is they're talking about, and they don't. Like we're all educating ourselves with sound bites and short, clips of information. Right. And I feel like, I don't know, that's what scares me is at the end of the day, it's very simple what we have to do. And I look, I'm all for it. But I also want to be critical too of the left, because I feel like, guys, we have to. It's very simple what we have to do. Yes, Black Lives Matter. It's so important. And it's like...
Black Lives Matter. And police are killing Black people. So this is a fucking pandemic within a pandemic.
Right. And I think...
Black Lives Matter.
Police,
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Police accountability might be a better phrase. Like police have to be held accountable for what they do. And they just shouldn't be given carte blanche to do whatever they want, which it kind of feels like that's what they have, And
it feels like there's progress being made, that the fact that the police are being arrested and whatnot, and in the future that will happen. As soon as something happens, they'll be arrested, but it's never going to end. Like there's never going to be a non-racist cop who doesn't deliberately want to, harm a Black person. I don't want to be cynical, but it's just true. It's like, so then what are the ultimate goals? You know what I mean? There are goals. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you something. I worked, and I'm not going to mention any names. I have a friend who's a police officer, and she has been there for my family. My family would not even exist had it not been for her. She is such a beautiful person. And she told me, as a police officer, she told me that they're not vetted properly. There are a lot of people that are racist that go right into the force. They're very, very hateful. And what do? They teach them how to use death moves, or I don't even know what to call those moves that are chokeholds or whatever. And they put a fucking rifle or a gun in their hand, and they send them out as racist, knowing this. Okay, I think another thing that we really need to pay attention to is we need to vet these people properly. I mean, really vet the shit out of them, vet their families, see where they come from, see who they are before you bring them in the force, shove a gun in their hand and teach them how to, but anyway, so yeah, I think
we talk about fear, but I agree with all these things, but at the same time, it's like, when you see people posting things like, I hate cops and cops are pigs, like, that troubles me too. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a liberal and I'm for Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't want to throw all police under the bus. That's where the conservative in me comes out. You know what I mean? Like, because again, at the end of the day, it's a small percentage of people that ruin everything, like right. During 9/11, like, there's a small percentage of Muslims who cheered 9/11 and who cheers.
But my fear is, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second, I don't believe that this is a small percent. I think it's a much larger percent. It's almost reminds me of what Trump says, if you don't get the testing, we'll never get the results. I think this has been going on historically for years. It's a genocide. They've been fucking killing black people. It's a fact. And we don't even know about all of it.
Look at the Buffalo Police Department when there was that video of them pushing that elderly guy, and he hit his head on the sidewalk and he was bleeding, and they suspended the cops that did that, and then 57 other policemen in that division all resigned from that particular division in protest. In other words, they all circled the wagons and got behind something that anyone could see on a video was egregious and was wrong, and at the very least they should have been suspended. Maybe fired on the spot would have been more like it. But every cop in that division supported the cops that did that.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Again, I'm contrarian about this, about everything basically, which is this is supposed to be about Black Lives Matter, and it's about the police abusing black people. So when there are videos posted of white people being abused by the cops, again, I don't want to seem heartless or like an asshole, and you can tell me to go fuck myself. I don't have a lot of sympathy. You know what I mean? When I'm seeing white people getting pummeled at these protests, or even that poor old guy who got shoved down, my heart bleeds for him a little bit, but at the same time, I'm like, this isn't about white people. It's about black people getting abused. And like, that's what kind of like, that's my criticism about the movement being other agendas being promoted. You know what I mean?
But that guy that was pushed over was part of the Black Lives Matter protest. He was part of that cause, and the police were just pushing him over so they could get to the black people that they really wanted to hurt.
100%. But I also believe that, look, this thing has got to get messy, and if you are out there in the front lines, protesting the police, this is part of it. You know what I mean? You gotta take your licks. Listen, I didn't join
but not if you're just walking up the street and there's, I don't know if they teach this technique at the police academy, but you can walk around a person and keep going. You don't have to shove them over to get down the sidewalk.
You're absolutely right. It's it's abuse of power. It absolutely is. It's abuse of power.
And listen, there's a reason I didn't go to the protests, and there's a reason I haven't gone. And my mother called me when things started to heat up. And a couple of reasons is, one, I was nervous about getting sick, because I didn't want to, because I've got a project that's actually supposed to start shooting tomorrow, and we're all trying to be safe and quarantine. But the main reason is, and my mother called me to ask me not to go to the protest, is I have anger issues, and I've been arrested several times, and I do have a problem with standing by, watching injustice happen, and not participating physically. I've been arrested 4 times in my life. Two of the times were.
Well, I've been in this business for a long time, and I can't get arrested.
You've done well. You've done very well. You're a legend, Frank. That's not you. Several times. That's. But for me, watching, if I were at the protest and I watched a police officer start hitting someone for no reason, because sometimes you just see a person walking by peacefully and someone gets hit. I have a hard time standing back.
Me too. Onur, I'm like you. It must be the Turkish Greek in us. It must be, because I would jump on them and start pounding them. I would do it. I would actually get physical too. I totally get it. It's very unnerving.
The Irish in me would cause me to just go over and say, all right, nothing to see here, move along.
I didn't want to I don't want to get my face pounded. I don't want to get arrested right now. I feel like and I feel like those things would happen. Now, I feel silly having this conversation because it is a triangle from where I'm seeing of white people right now, which is, that's fine. We're talking about things that are important, but I wish the cast of my film were here. I got schooled.
I'll tell you something. Your film really illustrates oh my gosh, I can't believe we're almost out of time. This conversation.
Sure
we haven't, this is amazing. Your film illustrates how these characters, most of the characters are deplorable in this film. You know what I mean? But they really believe what they're doing is justified. And you really illustrate that so amazingly in this film. Like, even when it comes to the gentrification with the Black community, with this other character that's the real estate agent that comes in, and he's trying to make them understand his very capitalistic ways, and they're trying to make him more human, and there's like this complete disconnect, so you really illustrate that. And there is, I don't want to give any, because I don't want to give the film away, but there is, I think in your character, and I'll say this very lightly, there is a form of, you start off extremely deplorable, but then there is like a little bit of an evolution happening with you.
Just the fact that, sure.
Right.
And I hope that happens with several of the characters, although some of the characters, the real estate guy, the capitalist, the laissez-faire capitalist, who is completely, he's an advocate of free market capitalism from Milton Friedman. There's a chapter in the movie called Milton Friedman, right? Mm-hmm. So the little black book of magic that allows him to create, to make the Black people disappear, the people of color disappear. It's all based on rules of capitalism, what gentrification does, which is, we're all culpable. One of the slogans that's going around is, if you're silent, you're part of the problem. If you're this or that, you're part of the problem. Well, if you go to a building and you take advantage of the low rents, and you bring in, and then the community starts, and then the area starts to change around you, and the real estate prices of rent go up, you're part of the problem as well. And I literally saw this. We shot in my building in Bushwick. I moved there. It was the corner of DeKalb and Broadway, which is the geographical center of New York, supposedly. Of all 5 boroughs, DeKalb and Broadway is supposedly the geographic center. I moved there about 7 years ago, and I was the first white guy in my building, right? And then, 6 years later, that everybody had left. Everybody had gone to different places, and I never really knew where they went. We all became friends. They were very, very sweet and nice. But by the time, it was very Puerto Rican, my neighborhood, and there would be like block parties every, 6 or 7 times a summer. And by the time that, 6 years had passed, those block parties stopped happening. And a lot of the people that were kind of indigenous to that area, if that's the right word, had gone away. And I'm like, I just saw it with my own eyes, and I just felt like a dick. But at the same time, I was proprietary about it. Like, as more white people started coming in the building, I kept thinking, fuck this. This was a cooler building when it was like black, but I was the first dude, so I maybe started it all, the movie was me wrestling with that idea. I made the movie real quickly for 2 reasons. Wrestling with the idea of seeing how gentrification affected my building and my block, and also seeing a play in the West Village about 8 years ago when I first came to New York, called Play Dead. I don't know if you ever saw this show. It was a brilliant show. I think one of the Penn and Teller guys, Teller, wrote it. A guy named Robbins, Tony Robbins, I think. Is that his name? Anyway, it's a beautiful movie show. And I was influenced by that, influenced by gentrification, and I put the two things together. And, we tried to make a movie that was about something.
Well, it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I'm telling you, it was really, really brilliant. I don't even think that you can tap into verbally how brilliant it is. No offense, okay? Because there's so many elements. There's so many elements that I think you just have to see it. It's brilliant. But then again, you're brilliant. And I want to, because we're running out of time, and I mean it, we have, what do I do? I'm in the bookstore one day, and I see this fucking book. Help, there's an elephant in my house. I had no idea you were writing a book by Onur Tukel. And this is a very informative book, okay, about all the atrocities that happen when there's an elephant in your house. And we know what an elephant means, okay? This book is brilliant. I was telling Frank that it was right next to this book.
What is that book?
The wonderful, the beautiful poetry of Donald Trump. And this
is that a real thing, or is that it's a joke book, right?
He's just gently sitting. It's a joke book, yeah. And he's just gently sitting on it looks like a nice little blanket, maybe having a picnic and reflecting. It looks like he's reflecting a little. And these are all the words he's ever used in poetry. I'd actually quickly like to read one. It says right here, Will Smith did a great job by smacking the guy reporter who kissed him. Together, we're going to fix our rigged system. Sarah Jessica Parker voted unsexiest woman alive. I agree. We must keep evil out of our country. A person who is very flat-chested is very hard to be a 10. We're going to make America great again. I love that it ends with a rhyme. Anyway.
I just have to say, I have a movie called The Misogynist coming out later this summer, too, which is about
it's so great.
In a hotel room celebrating on election night. And I feel like it's just as prescient or timely as Black Magic. And I hope people see these movies. They're hard to see because it's hard to get press for these small independent films. But I'm really happy.
It's really amazing how prolific you've been as a independent filmmaker.
Wow, you wouldn't even believe it. Yeah,
I really admire it so much, and you know, you don't sit around and wait for people in suits to
never.
say, you have my permission to go make that film. You just go out and make them, and it's really amazing.
I appreciate that, Frank and Irene. New York is an inspiring place. You know, I came here 10 years ago, and I love it here. And
you just keep putting it out. You're the most prolific filmmaker that I know, and your movies are brilliant. I know you hate a compliment, but fuck you right now.
You're great.
Seriously, fuck you. I don't call his movies are great. We have 3 minutes left. I want you to plug yourself and tell everybody where the movie's coming out, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I don't know. You know, the movie's coming out like iTunes and other places. I don't know where it's going to be streaming beyond that. I'm assuming Amazon. You know, you can look it up and find it. And I'll be on my social media, promoting it because we don't really have a PR person. So, you know, it'll be out. I think July 3rd is when the Black Magic for White Boys comes out. And I think later on this summer is when The Misogynist will come out. Factory 25 is putting out The Misogynist.
That's great.
MPI Media Group's putting out Black Magic. The book is available online. No bookstores are really carrying it, unfortunately, because I think it has a lot to say, and it's a very kind of fun.
It's so great. It's so informative. It's such a brilliant book. I love it. Did you do all the illustrations?
I did illustrations. You know,
all of them?
All of them, you know. And the idea was to poke fun of the ideology from the right and how they're well, although it's not true. Not everybody on the right is anti-environment. Not everybody on the right is racist. I mean, but, you know.
95%. The other 5% are dead. They were.
Come on, you live in New York. New York is it has a lot of conservative people in New York as well, and they're thoughtful.
That's true. Well, look who came from New York, Donald Trump.
Well, yeah.
Well, there you go. Shabam.
But, you know, there's a lot to admire about Trump in the sense that he beat 16 Republican candidates. I mean, after 9/11 and after the Bush administration, I was very, very I wasn't very fond of the Republicans, and I'm still not. But I got some joy watching him destroy 16 Republican candidates, even though there were some of them that I really liked. Compared to Trump, I got some joy. There was some Schadenfreude. What's the right word? Joy in someone.
Schadenfreude.
In watching him destroy 16 Republicans, you know what I mean? In a way, it's like there was part of me that admired him for that. Although I was crestfallen and devastated during the election.
I wish there was COVID flying in that room that day. One bird.
It wouldn't kill him. I tell you, they wouldn't kill him. 16 Republican candidates.
We're seriously running out of time. Onur, I love you. Thank you for being here. I'm Irene.
Thanks, Onur. Thanks,
we love you. Thank you for coming.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.